Today we are joined by Federal MP Peter Khalil.
A former advisor and now a prominent voice in Parliament. With a master's degree in international law, Peter brings a global perspective to domestic policy. So there's been a lot of debate around banning social media access for under 16s. As a father, what's your personal perspective on this?
Very supportive. And I think the reason that we are taking this action is to give children under 16 the time and the space to build up their real world connections with people, to build up their online resilience, because they're in the development stage. And we've seen a lot of evidence that shows exposure to social media, to that screen time, has negative impacts, especially in that development stage. It's not saying that there's not great benefits from social media and connectivity, but certainly at a younger age, it's important that they can have those real world connections. And I think we've got a whole generation that have been exposed to social media and some of the negative aspects of social media. I think it's well past time, and the government's taking action to regulate some of the worst impacts on children. We want them to go out and play sport. We want them to have friends and engage with each other. We want them to be able to have a fuller life in their experiences and their development.
What role do you think parents should play in regulating their kids' screen time versus government policy?
We have a very important role. I think it starts with the parents and the family. There's no doubt about that. I know for our children that we really limit screen time during the week, make sure that they're doing their homework, they're playing their sports, they're seeing their friends, and have some screen time on the weekends and so on. It's like anything, isn't there? It's like moderation. You can't have, if you have too much of one thing, it can be bad for you. You have little of something, it's not enough. You know, you've got to get the balance right. Parents play that formative role in managing that. And I think it's hard for parents because kids are always trying to get on the screen. One of the issues with the social media apps and the screen time is the kind of immediate gratification, the dopamine hit that young people get from the graphics and the screen itself. Sometimes kids have to be bored. They have to develop their creativity, their imagination. These are really important skills that they should develop. And apart from that, there's also the issue that I've spoken to a lot of doctors and optometrists about the use of glasses now, because kids are always having the screen in front of them and not seeing further away enough. So there's a lot of physical and mental health issues that come from too much screen time. And that's why the government is playing a role around the social media ban to help parents in managing the screen time and putting the responsibility and the onus on the social media companies to do what they need to do to deactivate and deregister underage accounts. And they have a responsibility there. And if they're not going to meet those responsibilities, as a government, we'll be fining them. Big fines.
Well, I'm happy about that personally because I also agree with everything you've said.
As a member of the Liberal Party, what was your own entrance into the workforce?
I actually worked as a cleaner. I worked in the service station night shifts. These are sort of the early jobs that I had to help my family get through that period of time to support
in
my
Australia?
family. Yeah, in Australia. So, and I was really pleased that there was penalty rates were important because there was a lot of irregular hours that I worked night shift and so on. So that's why I'm so pleased that our government has also protected. We passed laws to protect penalty rates. Some 2.6 million Australians will have their penalty rates protected who work irregular hours and so on weekends and public holidays. When I was younger, doing those jobs was about making a contribution to the family, helping us get through as well. But it taught me the value of hard work as well, to understand what you need to do and the sacrifices you need to make. That was a formative experience.
How have your early experience in the workforce influenced your views on workers' rights today?
Absolutely. Those experiences, I said, were formative in the sense that they influenced my very strong belief through the Labor Party and its values, the importance of protecting rights at work and conditions at work. Now, whether it's penalty rates, whether it's the rights at work and the conditions that people are facing, the safety issues that people have, these are all really important elements. And also the issue around casualised work versus more permanent work. We've seen a big increase over the last decades or so of a casualised workforce. So obviously casual workers have less rights. So it's important that we are legislating to protect their rights in those circumstances as well. The uncertainty of wages and salary when you're in casualised work, if you're a single mum, for example, you can only do certain types of work. We need to protect those workers in those spaces, and we've done that through many of the laws that we've passed just in the last couple of years. I mentioned the one in August to protect penalty rates as well for people working. It's about 2.5 million Australians working in that space. So my experience has helped inform me and understand the importance of protecting workers and their rights.
Australia has recently witnessed the anti-immigration protests. So what would you say those who took part in them?
Well, the first thing I'd say is that every Australian citizen, regardless of who they are and their background, they have a right to protest. There's a free democratic right to protest. However, there is also an obligation that comes with those rights, and that obligation really goes to the fact that you can't cross over in your freedom of expression into attacking someone because of their faith, their religion, their ethnicity, their gender, whatever it might be. You have a responsibility not to attack people based on who they are. And of course, there should be absolutely unacceptable any form of violence, any form of harassment, any form of hate speech that flows. So people have a right to protest. This is part of our freedom in this country. And I protect that, we support that. Every Australian citizen, every group can go and protest, they can express their views. But those views also have to be mindful and respectful of others, and that they don't cross over into attacking others based on who they are. And so any form of racism, any form of hate towards others is completely unacceptable. It's sanctioned by the law, by our laws. People will be pulled up if they breach the law in that space. But I think it's also a matter of basic decency and moral decency that, when you're expressing your views and you are free to do so, you're also respectful of others and tolerant of others, and you're not attacking those people.
What do you think drives anti-immigration sentiment?
Well, I think there's a lot of misinformation and misunderstanding about immigration. The arguments being made that immigration causes loss of jobs or structural deficiencies in the housing market. There's a lot of misinformation about that. Actually, immigration has been a boon to our economic growth. People come here, they make a contribution, they work hard, they pay taxes, they build businesses, they actually expand the economy. And that has been the story of Australia, of multicultural Australia. People have come to this country seeking a better life. They've worked really hard to give themselves and their children that better life. My family is a good example of that. Mum and Dad came from Egypt, and they worked very hard, working class, worked hard. We grew up in a housing commission, and they worked hard to give my sister and I a better life, and they made a contribution to this country. When it comes to immigration, I've been very outspoken on this issue in the Parliament as well, in support of immigration that involves permanent settlement, because there's a big difference. There's a difference between temporary visas and permanent settlement. If you come to this country from Turkey or from Egypt or from China or Vietnam or wherever you're coming from, and you're settling in and becoming a new Australian, you're contributing to the country. That's very different than the temporary visas, which have increased. They increased under the previous government, and they caused a lot of the pressures that we're seeing as well in Sydney and Melbourne. That there's nothing wrong with those people because they're filling certain gaps in the economy. But my view is that we need to actually support and invest in permanent settled migration. And this argument that's happening about we're taking too many people, it's not. Actually, it's more about the type of immigration that we're doing. We have humanitarian visas for refugees, which we support. There's some 20,000+ a year of those visas. We have permanent migration settlement, which is now it's around 150, 160,000. It's been up and down around that space for a number of years. And then we have the temporary visas. There's a place for temporary visas, but they shouldn't be taking the place of permanent settled migration, where people come here and they become Australian citizen and they make a commitment to this country and they contribute, because that grows our economy and grows our country in a very positive way. Immigrants to this country, everyone here is an immigrant. Yeah. Whether you come from England or Turkey, whether you come from Ireland or Lebanon, whether you came 200 years ago or you came 20 days ago, you are an immigrant. Unless you're an Aboriginal Australian, Indigenous Australian, you have been an immigrant to this country and you have come here to this adopted country. So the problem is not with immigration. That is what has built up our country. The problem is the type of migration that we're talking about. I support permanent, settled immigration where people become Australian citizens and make a contribution. And that's what we should be supporting, because that's where you get the benefits of immigration.
What message would you share with the new migrants who may feel unwelcome after recent protests?
To tell them that they are very welcome in this country. The vast majority of Australians welcome them to be part of the Australian family. Multiculturalism in this country is something that is quite unique. We come from all over the world to call Australia home. And one of I think the advantages of Australia's multiculturalism is that, and I say this to people in the citizenship ceremonies, you don't have to choose between your identities to be an Australian. Australia is made up of people from all over the world. We're all immigrants here unless you're a Aboriginal Indigenous Australian. And whether you're Lebanese or Chinese background or Vietnamese, whether you're Buddhist, Hindu, Muslim, Christian, no faith at all of that, who you are, you bring to becoming part of Australia. You add to the social fabric of Australia. So those new migrants are part of the Australian family. They are welcome in Australia. Of course, there's small numbers of people that may be antagonistic or anti-immigrant or even racist. That happens in every country. But the vast majority of Australians welcome new migrants to be part of the Australian family and the contribution that they make. And that's what has made us such a great country.
Recently, an Islamic center was opened in Coburg. So can you tell us why you believe this was an important development for the community?
Yes, the one in Nicholson Street, an amazing development, and I was so pleased to be part of supporting building of this beautiful new centre. We worked to get about almost $1 million in support for the centre. I saw the early schematics and some of the architectural design. It is beautiful, a beautiful design. I'm very excited to go and visit when it's finished to see what it looks like after having seen some of the blueprints. And I think it's a wonderful for the community, for the local community. It's something that's quite special that people can go to, that can enjoy. Obviously the people of faith for that community, but even the broader community can get an appreciation of the beauty of that centre. And they've done a terrific job there, so I'm looking forward to visiting.
How can we better celebrate the contribution of migrants in Australian society?
The celebration of what they've done, the support comes in us as the next generation who have benefited, being able to give them the support that they need. So whether it's, helping with their local issues, it's helping them have a better life. These are the things that I'm very passionate about as a local MP, supporting these new migrants as they come in with whatever services that they need for their settlement, for their children, education, healthcare, all these things. How can we help them have a better experience and a better life so they can transition into Australia? That's where the support is. The celebration should be publicly saying they are the champions. They are the ones who have made the sacrifices. We celebrate their effort as migrants to our country to make this country the great country that it is.
So you're saying that celebrating them starts with respecting them
Celebrating,
and their efforts.
Well, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you can give awards and so on and so forth and acknowledge people's contributions, but it starts with, as you say, Dilan, respect. A respect for what they've done and what they're doing, and also supporting them, with real actions. So, what's important for their lives? They need protection of their work rights, penalty rates. A lot of new migrants working casual hours or getting different jobs. They need support with housing. They need support for education for their children. They need support for their communities and their keeping of their culture. These are the things that government can do quite well in supporting those communities.
And how did your upbringing in a migrant family shape your views of the government before even pursuing a career in politics?
Very profoundly, because when I was growing up, we were given an opportunity by policies of Labor governments. That's why I was sort of attracted to Labor, because those state and federal Labor governments gave us opportunities in housing. So we grew up in a public housing, in a housing commission, like a lot of migrants that came in that period. We got access to a quality education, which was made available to us, and steady work. For my parents, worked very hard, but they were given opportunities for employment. And so those things, fundamentals, the basis of life, and the support to allow you to fulfill your potential, was what was provided by government. So for me, that was very influential, understanding how life-changing policies that government put in place can be for people, to give them the chance to be something. And of those three, they're all important, but I would say education is absolutely critical because it opens up the door to opportunity so that you can walk through and achieve your potential in any way that you want. Education really opens up those doors for people to have a great life.
How do you navigate the media landscape, and which media news sources do you trust?
Only Dunya. That's the only one that I trust. No, it is a difficult landscape because there's so much media now, and there's also, clickbait, a lot of media. Sensationalism. A lot of media is really just trying to get clicks, and sometimes even the journalists are incentivized. The more sensational the story, the more clicks they get, the more pay they get, or whatever it might be. So there's a skewing of the landscape to an extent. I think it's really, really important to support, I'm being serious now, to support media outlets like yours, community and local outlets, because they provide a perspective and a voice that is really important to be heard from communities. It's important to support public broadcasting and making sure that there's a public space for public broadcasting as well, that's not just driven by a profit motive. So I'm a big supporter of SBS. I used to work at SBS
yes,
as
I know that.
a director, and it is kind of a unique in that it provides a multicultural and multilingual offering. Supporting lots of local media is important as well. And I think the tension and the struggle that we have now is there is a lot of breakdown in traditional media versus the social media. What is a journalist? What qualifications do you need to have as a journalist? All of these things. What are your ethical constraints or your ethical considerations in telling a story and presenting the truth? It goes back to the general principle, which is the tension between the right for free speech and freedom of expression versus, how do you regulate when people go beyond free speech towards misinformation, disinformation, which causes harm. That's a very difficult balance to determine from a legislative point of view or a regulatory point of view, because you don't want to go so far that you prevent people from speaking freely, because all that does is suppress particular views and makes things worse underground, so to speak, or they go in the shadows. But at the same time, judging where the information has misled or will cause damage. You have free speech, but it's constrained. You can't just go into a cinema and scream fire and everyone panics and runs out when there's no fire. Yeah. You see what I'm saying? And so there is a constraint there under the law around what it is you can and can't say in certain circumstances. That's an easy example, but it's a similar type of thing. Where is the harm being caused? And that is the judgment. It's very difficult for parliaments to make that judgment. We do have laws in place. Obviously, we have anti-vilification laws. We have anti-discrimination laws. So if people go past a certain point and they're attacking a group or a ethnicity or whatever, there are laws against that. They're sanctioned. There are laws around misinformation as well.
After the Yes campaign failed, obviously. That's when they started coming in. A little too late, but...
Yeah, that's right. So this is one of the challenges that face governments around the world, how to put in place these regulations, particularly in the way that information is spread so quickly now through the social media and through those platforms that you have.
How has the area changed since you became involved in local politics?
Always changing. I mean, Wills particularly has, I think every cycle, every 3 years, 30% of people move out and 30% of people move in. So there's a lot of people moving. We have obviously new migrants that have come into the electorate from, Nepalese migrants, from Bangladesh, from Pakistan, and from other parts of the world. So that changes the character of the place as well. There are different demographics, aging demographics of different communities, like some of the Greek and Italian and Turkish communities are older now, so the older generation, so they're changing. Their needs are changing as well, so it's really supporting those communities with, aged care and home packages and things like that. And then you've got the second and third generation who are moving into different parts of life. So there's always change. One of the constants in life is change, and the electorate has changed, but it is still, I would say, one of the most diverse, most culturally and ethnically diverse electorates in Australia, frankly, and it's kind of a microcosm of modern Australia. We have everything in Wills, from all the way down in North Fitzroy, all the way up to Fawkner. I think we have everything in sort of urban environment and suburban as in a city, except maybe for a farm. We don't have really farms, except for the market garden farms on Merry Creek, which is one kind of small farm. But apart from that, we don't have the regional aspect. But everything else, it's kind of representative of what modern Australian cities are.
What's one skill from your national security work that helps you out in Parliament?
Oh, that's a very good question. I think being able to assess options, especially when you don't have all the information, that they sometimes you get limited information in sort of certain situations, and you have to make a judgment call based on what you have. And sometimes you have to wait for a little bit more, but sometimes you don't have the time to do that. In Parliament, to go to your question, we are constantly balancing judgments. For example, we were talking about earlier, what is the commitment to the private individual and their rights versus the public security? Okay, so sometimes these are in not conflict, but they are in tension. The more rights you give the individual, the more that might impact public safety. The more constrained you are on public security and public safety, you are limiting the rights of every individual. So you've got this constant balancing, and that's the national security framing. A lot of laws that we look at, to answer your question, that skill in understanding those options and those issues translate into the work of a parliamentarian, at least for me, in understanding that, getting that balance right. When you look, for example, when I look at legislation, when I look at bills.
In the latest election, you were up against a strong opponent who was quite popular with Labor voters. How did you approach that challenge?
I'm not sure about that, but I think in every election campaign, and particularly in the last one, there are always lots of candidates, lots of different parties running. Obviously the Greens, the Liberals, One Nation, Socialists and so on. There's always strong interest and strong candidates and pretty tough campaigns. I think my approach to that was always to demonstrate to my community the work that I'd done for them, the work that we can continue to do for them, the fact that we deliver on policies that make a difference to their lives and actually change their lives for the better. And I think the big contrast between a Labor member of Parliament, a Labor candidate, Labor MP, and some of these other parties is that they couldn't deliver any of this. They can't form government. They can't actually follow up on any of the promises that they make. And a lot of promises were made by the other parties and the other candidates that would never, ever actually be delivered. Because the way the system works is you've got to be part of a party that can form government. So say I make a commitment to $1 million for the Turkish Islamic Centre in Nicholson Street. I have to follow up on that. That's a promise of a government. The government then delivers that through the budget process. A candidate from a minor party can promise $1 billion. Everyone says, oh, that's fantastic, but never deliver anything on it. And so that, I think, is the big difference between the two. And I think most people, the majority of people, understood that as well.
Are you now in Egypt?
Well, I'm not sure. My cousins know who I am, and my aunties and uncles. But I think there was, when I first got elected, I got a picture in the front. When I first got elected in the Australian Parliament in 2016, there was an article in the major daily national newspaper, Al Ahram, which means Al Ahram, the pyramids.
Al-Ahram.
Yeah. So that was front page. It was a picture of me saying, Peter Khalil, Egyptian, was Egyptian Australian, was first ever Egyptian Australian to be elected to the federal parliament.
If you were appointed as a minister, which ministry do you believe would best align with your skills?
That's a great question. I've already been sworn in as a minister, as Assistant Minister for Defence, and I've been given this great honour and privilege to work for the national interests and national security of Australia through that portfolio. But if it was in a fantasy, I'd love to be Minister for Sport. You get to go to all of the great sporting events, whether it's the football, the tennis,
your expertise,
the Matildas, the Socceroos, the AFL. But even in that, there's a very serious part of being a sports minister, particularly around our support for community grassroots level sports and community sports, as well as the Olympics and our programs. So, look, when the Prime Minister calls you and says, Peter, I want you to be Assistant Minister for Defence, my answer to him was, thank you very much for giving me this great honour, and I'll be working so hard to work for the government and for you to get the results. So it's a great honour and a privilege to be able to be a minister in government, to make a change to people's lives. Yeah.
Thank you for having us, Peter, and thank you for supporting local news.
Thank you for having me. Cheers.
Thanks for watching, and I hope you guys enjoyed.